So please, I'm a little bit, freaked out right now, but just make sure that you'll know that, it's like I took a picture, in my house. My wife liked to do the themes of the feast and stuff. So in regards to Hanukkah, so she puts in some of the lights and, it's kind of cool. It's just something that we do in the house. And, we have, like a little plastic, tree that we have there for decoration all year long. That's what she has. I told her the house is yours. My office is mine. The house is yours, and I was doing it live. I think it was sometime. I don't remember. But it's not a Christmas tree. So it's like I'm doing the live, and all of a sudden I'm panning through, and it shows like the tree that she has all year long, but she puts a little like Hanukkah stuff around, and somebody thought it was a Christmas tree. I'm going like, you should know after 20 some odd years that I don't follow Christmas. But it only goes to show you people pay attention to what we do. So in a way, it's good to be accountable, making sure that we do those things. So it's kind of interesting when we're dealing with the Torah portions, and I believe that the Torah portions sometimes reveal many things going on in our lives that week. So let's open with a word of prayer and let's get into the Torah portion. I need to know, Pastor, how much time I have exactly. So I could, 3 hours. Okay, great. Pastor's going like, I'm tired, dude. You got to finish it out. Okay, perfect. Noonish, is a Puerto Rican noonish or is that American noonish? There's a distinction. Puerto Rican noonish is like 3. I'm just playing with you. Okay. That's like half Puerto Rican noonish. Okay, good. There you go. The Torah portion this week is actually, I think, in my opinion, a really good one, and it deals with prophetically what's going on around us today. Is the Torah portion of Vayishlach, and it's Genesis chapter 32, verse 4 to chapter 36, verse 43. Now, Torah, for me, teaching the Torah, is the highest level of honor, in my opinion. I've been doing this a long time, and sometimes we get into topical teachings, and I think that is important, clearly. But when you start teaching the Torah, and specifically learning the commandments in the Torah, each Torah portion has commandments. This one has one. Is the fourth, I think it's the third commandment from Genesis, and it's the third one here. And then you don't have any more of commandments of the 613 until Parashat Bo, which is Exodus chapter 12. And there are 20 commandments in that Torah portion. And those commandments are all dealing with the temple, Passover, and the way Passover was done. And if you study the commandments every week within the Torah portion, after 1 year, you will see the change in your life. Because sometimes we read through the Bible, right? I mean, when you read the Bible, sometimes they don't tell you what the Bible is really telling you. You're reading a story. And the story is not applicable to you because you live in the 21st century. The stories here are written to a people who are so far removed from our environment. The Bible, there's a scholar named John Walton. He says, the Bible was written for us, but not to us. That is very true. In my studies of the ancient Near East, and I don't know if you know who Mark Chavalis is. Mark Chavalis is one of the leading authorities in the whole world in regards to ancient Near East and Mesopotamia. And as I study with him every week. I have a class with him. And it's quite interesting how we start talking about the Bible in the context of a cultural context. And all of a sudden now things start to make sense, because when we do not understand the culture, we're going to lose half of the message. Let me ask you a question. How about Jacob bowing 7 times to Esau? What does that mean? See, every time the Bible and the Torah points out something that is so removed from our understanding, it has meaning. I said it last night. Why did John have to mention that Yeshua was there for the Feast of Dedication, when in fact Hanukkah is not a commandment within the 613. It is actually a national holiday to be observed by the nation of Israel, just like the 4th of July is to us here. Right? So why did John make sure he makes a statement that he was there in the Feast of Dedication? So instead of arguing whether or not he kept it or not, We should be looking behind the message. Why did he do it? What was the message? And why on that day? And what does that day represent? The same thing in this week's Torah portion. I believe that this week's portion reflects where Israel is in the end of days. If you give me the opportunity, I'd like to highlight some of those points. But to understand this week's portion, and I'm not going to read obviously the whole thing. We're going to attack some of the main topics within the portion. Okay, but I highly recommend to consider, and there's a good resource. It's called Taryag HaMitzvot. Taryag Mitzvot. It's a resource that has all of the Torah portions, and it tells you how many commandments in each Torah portion, and it tells you a little bit about the legality behind each one of the commandments. To whom does it apply, where it applies, if it's for the temple, for the land, for the Sanhedrin council, for the women, for the priest, for the high priest, for the Levites. And that really gives you great information about how to approach the scriptures. Now, let me ask you a question. How many of you have been following the Bible for a long time? Less than 10 years. Raise your hand if you've been following the Bible or following God for the last 10 years. Less than 10. Less than 10. Perfect. So when you first started, you read something and you're going, what in the world is this telling you? You don't really get it. How many of you have been here to Israel? I know some of you have been here with me. Okay. How many things do you understand now, Pastor, just by being in the land? And then all of a sudden you see it in the Bible, and then Ephesus, for example. I was there in March, early March. I was in Turkey, Greece, and Rome. My life changed. The whole New Testament is different. I mean, the whole letters of Paul is like take a different dimension now. I mean, just to see like the latrines, you think, really? Latrines? Yeah. Because if you understand how those things work, if you understand that the gospel to the Roman was when the emperor will conquer, and then he will build a road. He will give you running water. He will build latrines. He will build a temple. In other words, he's facilitating on your basic needs. That's the good news. Hey, we don't have a road. The emperor conquered this tyrant that we had here, and now he builds us a brand new road with latrines and a temple. And you go, good news. All right, there we go. That's the gospel. That's what the gospel meant to them. We don't really understand those things. Running water. I was in Laodicea, the city of Laodicea, a very ancient city. They were known because of their water. You see, because the sources of water came from the place by the time it got to that area. It was lukewarm. So now when the book of John talks about Laodicea, don't be lukewarm, it's actually using the topography of the location to send the picture about the situation and the state of the people living there who are supposed to serve God. I got to see like clay pipes. You see, you don't understand. I mean, if you had clay pipes in your community, you were well-to-do. You have money. You have running water in your house. Now, when you go back and you go 2,000 years earlier, the story of Jacob. Now, Jacob is going to go away to get a bride, to go get Rachel. So the story that we're reading today is the end result of something that Jacob did when the Lord appeared to him on that ladder to heaven. Right? Let's go to the book of Genesis chapter 28. And then we're going to start building about why I believed Jacob got in trouble after he came back from house of Laban. Why I believe his house became chaotic. Did you notice when Jacob comes down from the house of Laban, he suffers 20 years in the house of Laban. Now, please, I remind you that represents, this is a type and a metaphor of Israel in the dispersion for 2,000 years. Israel, Jacob, was actually in the diaspora, dispersion for 2,000 years. And there he prospers. There he finds brides. His family is developed outside of the land of Israel. Now, when it's time to return, 20 years later, now remember, he made a vow to God before he went. Now, when he returns, he needs to basically put out what he vowed he would do. Let's read on that. In Genesis 28, verse 12, all the way to verse 25. Very important, because if we do not understand what happened in Genesis 28, then we're not going to see the end result and the reason why we must be loyal to covenant no matter what. We must be loyal to an oath and a confession that we make. That's the key. I remind you that every single one of you made a confession accepting Yeshua as your master, as your Kyrios, as your owner. Therefore, we are to serve Messiah because he represents the authority of the Father. So we have made an oath. Are we loyal to that oath? You see, in the story of Jacob, you're going to understand that you're loyal to your oath not when things are going well. The loyalty to your oath is when you're tested. The loyalty of a marriage is when another woman trying to encroach in your marriage, or when there's another man encroaching in your marriage, and you decide not to go the way to the left or to the right and stay consistently in love with your wife and submit the oath and submit to the oath that you took when you took the marriage vows. See, we're tested. When we're tested, that's when you know who your real friends are. Right? Jacob is going to be tested. Yeshua was tested. He was tested to the point that he never wavered in his loyalty to the Father, even if it meant death. He believed without a shadow of doubt that the God who sent them to the earth to restore the honor of the Father, Yeshua, to restore the honor of the Father, will be loyal to the end, something Adam did not do. When Adam was tested, he was given the opportunity, hey, you be like God. Okay, give me the fruit. And he took the bait and he went outside the realm of life, being exposed to the realm of death. In every single story of the Bible, you see the same blueprint. Someone is chosen by God. Someone is sanctified by God. Someone now represents the Lord. And then the enemy will come trying to entice you to go in a different direction. And by and large, 90% of the audience always fail to live up to the oath and the commitment. Yes? And here we see the same thing. And he dreamed the dream, and behold, a stairway was set up on the earth. Its top touched the heavens, and behold, angels of God were going up and going down. Nothing new in the ancient Near East. If you go to the Bible Lands Museum, by the way, I'm going to take a tour to Israel in Spanish in May. So if you want to go, please come if you speak Spanish. If you don't speak Spanish, then, you just show up anyway, look at the pictures, and I'll teach it to you. I'm planning on a tour to Turkey and Greece in November, hopefully November of next year, the footsteps of Paul. So if you really want to go and learn all that stuff, please consider coming with me. So the going up and going down to the heavens is nothing new. It's called a ziggurat. A ziggurat is like a stepstone, a type of pyramid. Okay, and they believe that they put not a temple, because there was not really a temple. There was no worship taking place, but they put like a little house on top of the ziggurats. They put a chair, and they believe that the gods will come down. This is prevalent. I have what it's called. There's some seals that shows the whole depicting of the ladder to heaven. The difference is that now they were always thinking, everyone that raised up a ziggurat is thinking, they thought that the creation began in that spot. They believed that it was that spot in which the gods came down to create humanity and meet with humanity. Here God is showing Jacob, no, this is the spot, Bethel, the house of God. And he tells you, this is it, and I did not know it. This is the gate of heaven. Okay, I want you to think about this. And behold, the Lord was standing beside him, and he said, I am the Lord, the God of the fathers, your Abraham and Isaac, the God of Abraham. The ground on which you were sleeping, I will give to you and to your descendants. That is called Natana. It's a gift. The gifts of God are what? The gifts of God are? That means that the land is holy and is a gift to Israel. If you reject the land, you're rejecting the gift. You reject the one who gave you the gift. Now you understand later on in the book of Numbers, when the 10 spies rejected the land, that's why they suffered death and they were in the wilderness for 40 years, because they rejected the gift of the king. So if any Jewish person of anyone fights against the land and rejects the land like it is today, God doesn't change. I will bless those who bless you, and I will curse those who curse you. I mean, I understand the nations not having any respect for the land of Israel. I get it. There's no covenantal relationship with the ancestors and with the Torah. But when you see Jewish people never wanting to go to the land, never cared about the land, or they don't really explain about the holiness of God's land, His throne, His kingship, the hub of authority, that's besides my understanding. I don't get it. Okay? All right, it says, to your descendants shall be like the dust of the earth, and you will spread out to the west, to the east, to the north, to the south, and all the families, and this is key, and this is where you come in. This is where you come in. And all the families of the earth will be blessed through you and through your descendants. That's the number one message Paul was taking to the nations. That Israel has the most unique purpose in this world. We are the people who are supposed to make a distinction between the holy and the profane. We are the ones to stand in the gap and tell the nations, no, we follow a God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. The customs are different because it's bound on a covenantal relationship of separation. We're not like the nations. We are supposed to be different. Not to be self-righteous because of it, but because to be an example of how God takes a wounded vessel, an outcast vessel, and sanctifies it and brings a higher level of honor so we can be in His presence. And in return, we exchange our allegiance for that gift of salvation that we don't deserve. Yes? This is the message of Paul. This should be our message. And all the families of the earth shall be blessed through Jacob, through Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Let me ask you a question. Are the nations of the earth blessed because of us right now? Let me rephrase that again. Are we walking according to the standards of God's holiness to the point that the nations, when they look at us, they will be blessed through us? Then we need to go back to the basics and understand what God requires of us. And that's the reason for every story in the Bible. The stories in the Bible is relating to you a relationship between the Creator and humanity in which the Lord understands that the humans are never going to be doing things perfectly, and yet the God of Israel is faithful and true and merciful enough to still want to have contact with you. But that doesn't mean He doesn't demand loyalty, loyal love. It's interesting how out of the pulpits every Sunday morning, it's always love, 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 love. If only they will look at the word ahava in the Hebrew in the context of the ancient Near East. The ancient Near East is the world surrounding Israel at the time of the written of the scriptures. The word love was not an expression of affection. The word love was actually defined by your allegiance and your loyalty to that person and the covenant and the oath, to the point that if I am in covenant with you and you dare attack him, I'm not asking questions what you did. It's you attack him, you attack me, you're dead. That's the way it was. That's the way it was. Today people attack us from the world. And the number one people going against us is not the world, it's the people who are supposed to be brothers and sisters of Messiah. We do not understand what loyalty is. We really don't. And this story is showing you, although Levi and Simeon committed a mistake, they were too zealous to the point that they almost got the whole family killed. But because they did something to Dinah, now you will pay for what you did, profaning our sister. But remember, Dinah was not so innocent either. She was walking about the way by herself. And if you look into the ancient Near East, only loose women did that. Because in the ancient world, women protect the purity of the family, and the men protected the honor of the family. So what they did goes perfectly in line with the customs and the culture of his day. You defile the women, we kill you, because now if she gets pregnant, there's a bastard child. And then the father of the house no longer has honor because they don't know who their father is. Is this making sense? There's so much in the story. Not only in the personal level as a community, but also by and large as a whole nation. Israel right now has been really suffering from a lot of the enemies, and I would choose to say, and I hate to say it this way, but Israel's part blame being open to the attacks of the enemy. Sadly, We know what happened on October 7th of last year was one of the most despicable things cowards could do to a people. I got it. That no one justifies that. God forbid. I mean, in a way, what happened to Gaza, they had it coming. They will pay, because I told my wife, and I told somebody a day before, as a matter of fact, I was teaching in Tennessee, a day before the event occurred. And I was teaching about covenant. I said, you know why the Muslims do not attack the kids within the old city of Jerusalem? You go to the old city, the kids are walking around. Muslims leave them alone. They don't touch the kids. They may stab an adult. They don't touch the kids. Because I make the statement, because they know the moment they touch the kids, the Jews will be like that lion. Once it takes a bite, they will not let it go. The next day, the events happen. And exactly that, the next day, Netanyahu, he says, we are at war. First thing that came out of his mouth. And I'm thinking, I told my wife, that's the lion waking up. They're not going to let this one go. And the wars and all, but in all of this, it revealed the anti-Semitic spirit of the American people. That now the oppressors became the heroes. Esau, the oppressor, becomes the hero of Jacob. He gives them a tribute. I'm going to show you. And it says, verse 15, and behold, I am with you, and I will keep you wherever you go, and I will bring you to this land, and will not leave you until I have done what I have promised you. This is what God says to Jacob. Remember, God tells him, I will protect you. You will be a blessing. I'll give you this land. I'll give you a family. Remember, Jacob had nothing. He's running away from his family. He's heading to get a bride. He has absolutely nothing to offer to God, just like you and I had nothing to offer to God when we came to him. Absolutely nothing. Only he wanted loyalty. It's always easy to give loyalty to God when you have nothing and he's receiving everything. But watch, it's going to get interesting. Then Jacob woke up from his sleep and said, surely Adonai is indeed in this place, and I did not know. For he was afraid to say, how awesome is this place? This is nothing else than the house of God, and this is the gate to heaven. That's how I know Jerusalem is the center of the earth. And Jacob rose early in the morning and took the stone that he had put under his head and served it up to a stone pillar. And poured oil on top of it. You see, if you study the ancient Near Eastern history like I do, you know that Jacob is about to do a pillar, a stone pillar. It was a boundary markers, and in some places represented like an altar. In other words, Jacob is coming into a covenantal relationship with God, not through Abraham and Isaac, but now himself. He's doing it. Okay, and listen to what he says. And he called the name of that place Bethel. However, the name of the city was formerly Luz. And Jacob made a vow. Made a vow. And it said this, and we're going to examine what the vow is. And if you understand what the vow is, and you go back to the story of Joseph, of Jacob, and you start reading when he's coming back 20 years later. This is 20 years before he goes. He returns, I'm sorry. And then you come back 20 years later and you see how he's been prospered, how God did what he said he will do, and then how quickly he forgot his oath and his vow. Watch. And if I return in peace, he says, and Jacob made a vow saying, if God will be with me and protect me on this way that I'm going, and gives me food to eat and clothing to wear, and if I return in peace to the house of my father, then Adonai will be my God. And this stone that I have set up as a pillar shall be the house of God. And all of that you have give to me, I will certainly give a tenth to you. Oh, now we got problems. When you understand the legality of Scripture, when you understand the elements of what happened there, in a vow, a stone pillar, and then he's making a confession that he will do something, you are bound by your word. And in the ancient world, if you didn't follow through on what you vowed, you are shaming God's name, therefore you sin against God, and you open yourself to all kinds of chaos. That's why many people say, how come nothing goes right in my life? Because you say you follow the Messiah. You say that you are loyal to God until something difficult comes in your life. And then you can quickly forget about your commitments and you start appeasing everyone. And you start acting like the nations. And you behave the way they do because you're more afraid of what they will think about you instead of the commitment we made to a God we've never seen. That happened to me. Maybe that's why my credibility amongst the kingdom is maybe I'm too hardcore on certain things. I'm not better than you. It's just that I made so many mistakes along the way, and I understand the legality of the Bible, that I am completely understanding that if I do not follow through in who I vow my loyalty to, not only would I suffer, my family will suffer. Why? Because I opened the doors of all the curses. Because God doesn't curse me, you see. When I come into the covenant, there's blessings and there's curses. If you do not go by the commandments and the commitment of that blessing or that oath and that vow, then you yourself open the doors to the chaos. God is not a God who sits on his throne with a whip in his hands. That's not the king that I serve. He is good. He is righteous. He is holy and he is kind. We are the ones who transgress and turn around on our loyalty. That's why in the Torah, the connection between marriage, a metaphor of a bride and a husband, is always so prevalent in Scripture. Because that's the only way that you can really relate with the Lord. I love my wife. Not because she's beautiful, not because she's a good woman, but because I made a commitment to God that she will be the one that I want to live with. Everything else is icing on the cake. Everything else comes as, wow, I told my wife, honey, you know why I'm with you? Not because I love you. I thought it was love when I first married her. Sounds weird, doesn't it? But when I learned what commitment was in Scripture, I told her, I'm with you because I'm fully committed to you, and love becomes the expression of that commitment. What keeps you together is not love. What keeps you together is the commitment to deal with the hard times, that you know someone's not going to run out on you when things get difficult. That's why I love my wife. I was without a house, homeless, $25 to my name. I had purpose. I had a calling. It wasn't manifested yet. And I told her when I met her, on the first date, I said to her, if you believe in me, I'll show you the world because I got purpose. And I told her the first day we went out, you will be my wife. Not because I was being arrogant, because I had nothing to offer. See, what you don't know is that when I saw her walking into the synagogue that morning for the first time, I said only twice in my life that I heard a little voice and my heart literally says something to me. First part was when my father was dying. I prayed to the Lord, please, Lord, would you please consider healing him? And, what's going on, Lord? I went to my king, and he says, he will sleep with your fathers. Yes, sir, whatever you desire would happen. That's exactly what I heard. I don't go around saying the Lord spoke to me. It's only twice that I heard a voice like that. And I remember when he says he will sleep with his fathers, I knew what that meant. He used the language of Scripture. And I remember while I was driving, exactly the time too, in Puerto Rico. And I requested to my king, I said, Lord, so there be your will. Will you please honor me to at least hear his last breath before he dies? He did. It's the only one who heard the last breath. I was singing Shalom Aleichem to him when he departed, and he'd be waiting for me in the kingdom. The second part was when I saw my wife for the first time. I don't know why I'm telling you the story. When she walks in, I look back and I look twice, and I heard that little voice says, that's your wife. See, before I made too many mistakes. You see what I'm saying? I got a testimony. And I had nothing to offer this woman, and we went out. Took her out. We spoke for 4 hours. Man, I never talked to anybody that long that I actually liked that much. It was great. And she said, hey, what did you think about me when you saw me? And I'm thinking, if I tell this woman she's going to be my wife, but I'm believing what I heard, and it was not bad pizza. And I told her, you're going to be my wife. But I only have one thing to offer, that I love God above anything else. That's all I got to offer you. And if you believe in me, I will show you the world. I was speaking with that much confidence. I own $25 in my name. The car that I'm renting, it was renting. My father let me borrow the credit card because I had no money. I played professional baseball. I was a professional baseball player. I was a baseball scout for 10 years, and I have nothing to show for it. When I met her, I had nothing. So she did have the loyalty. This is the reason I remember when I took it to Greece, when I took it to Israel, South Africa, Australia, New Zealand. Not South Africa, New Zealand, and all these places, right? And I turn around and says, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob is the one who's brought us here. God is so good that he did not let me ashamed when I told her, if you believe in me, I'll show you the world because I got purpose. So now I see in her one thing that I so admire and love, loyalty. When no one likes me, she's there for me. When no one cares about me, when people slander me, she's the one picks me up. When I had nothing, she will give me everything she had. That relationship is exactly what God requires of us. We are her. We have nothing to show for, yet he took us in. We have nothing to offer, yes, he still wants to come into a marriage relationship. We were nothing to give in loyalty. We slept around with other gods, and still yet he waits patiently for us to return to him. He gives you gifts, and we don't want them. We want the gifts of the world. And we only come to him when we're completely broken, when we have nothing good to offer, when we are just people who no one wants. Even in the prophets it says that Israel is like a prostitute. They were terrible prostitutes. They will pay their lovers instead of the lovers paying them. Jacob made a vow. He says, and Jacob made a vow. What is a vow? Have you ever looked at that word? And the reason why I'm bringing the marriage relationship and the marriage language is because the marriage language and the vows and commitments, I talk to any woman who suffered through adultery, husband becoming unfaithful, or vice versa. A woman will quickly remind you, you broke your vows. And when there's reconciliation, you want to do a do-over. Let's do a new wedding. And you better write your vows and better be serious with your vows. Am I right or am I wrong? We take the vows between two mortals more serious than the vows we take with God. We don't realize. And this is the reason why in Scripture is always the connection between a marriage relationship. So you will understand what's intimacy, what is adversity, what keeps you together. Now, I'm sure the Lord is not happy with me every day. And there are times when I look up and I say, Lord, I don't understand. I trust you, but keep walking. Try ministry. See how lonely this walk is. People think we have a lot of people around us. No matter what we say, someone's going to find fault with it. No matter what we do. But yet, they want the teachers until we need to correct you. Oh, great teacher, until we bring correction, they get mad at you. Just like a kid gets mad to the parents. But what do we do as parents? They come running to us crying. And we pick them up and we give them hugs and we encourage them. Yes? That's how good is. That's how good God is. Now, Nedel, we got to look at these words. Shvuah is an oath and Nedel is a vow. Please understand the differences. So Nedel is I'm going to read to you what it is. The word Nedel is related to the verb nadar, which means to make a vow. A Nedel, a vow, in the Old Testament, is always a vow made to God, never between two humans. That's now lets you know how serious this was. He had a Nedel. He made a vow directly with the deity. You don't make a vow with somebody else. Okay? The neder is either a result of a vow or the thing offered to fulfill the vow. It was a type of thank offering in return for God's favor. That's really what it was. Are you with me? Okay? So let me read to you here because I want you to know the definition. Okay? So you make a vow to get God's favor, like in Numbers chapter 21, verse 1 and 2. And it could either be accompanied by a burnt offering. In this case, it was accompanied by a stone pillar and the oil, remember? So that makes it legally binding. This is not just him saying words without a meaning. Everything now in the life of Jacob hinges on that. His lifestyle in Laban's house hinges on this vow. His return to the land hinges on this vow. The future of Israel in the future hinges on that vow. Okay? And it says, or a peace offering. In Numbers chapter 30, verse 2, says, if a man makes a vow for the Lord or swears an oath, two different things, with a binding pledge on himself, he must not render his word invalid. He must do all that went out from his mouth. And that's Numbers chapter 30 explaining to you what Jacob did in chapter 26. Are you with me? Hopefully I want to give you a good insight into this so we would understand our responsibility to the covenantal relationship. We already know that God's responsibility, He has fulfilled it, right? What is our responsibility? Is this new to you guys? The Torah is new to you guys? How long have you been following this stuff, more or less? About a year. So you know there's so many things that you're trying to figure it out. Every week is something new. And sometimes you feel you're doing something right and you realize you're not doing it right. Let me simplify it for you. You made an oath. You made a commitment. Your job is to understand the rules that allows you to stay within the blessing of that oath and commitment. Married, right? How long? And let me ask you, because we men always forget. Like 3 years? Okay. 3 or 4 months? That's it? Congratulations. That's awesome. All right. So now you're still in the getting to know stages because you're married. Right? Everything's all good. In about 1.5 years, you'll get in each other's nerves. It's okay. That's part of the process. In 10 years, oof. In 20, you're already over to okay, whatever. I'm sticking with you now. I got no way. Anyway. But you're getting to know one another. Now, if you consider the relationship as new as it is in the marriage, it's different than just dating. And you consider it's the same thing. You're getting to know her, you're getting to know him, and then it's the same thing. We, as the metaphor of the bride, we're trying to get to know him. It's about relationship, sacred space. It's about understanding what you mean to me and what I mean to you. For example, this ring means nothing really to my wife when I'm with her. This ring is only a sign that I'm married. You see, many men, they go outside their house, they take out their rings. Okay? Now, he already went like, nope, I ain't doing that. Right? You know what happens. What was your ring? Right? But in reality, this is not for me to know I'm married. I already know I'm married. This is a sign to let everybody else out there off limits. It's not like I think I have limits anyway, or like I think I'm that good looking that somebody else will want me anyway. The point is, that's the point. Just leave me alone, whether you think I'm pretty or not. It's irrelevant. If you think I'm good looking, okay, great, but stay away. If you think I'm ugly, stay away too. You know, that's the whole idea. Because you know if I'm loyal to my wife, not because she's with me, it's when she's not around that you'll know if I'm loyal to her or not. Because I could have a ring and my actions will not reflect the marriage commitment that I have to her by my behavior. Get it? How much more when it comes to the way we observe the Torah. So the commandment is the way you get to know him, so that when you are no longer in him and here in the congregation and you are by yourself, then people know to whom you're committed to. So whatever you eat, whatever you do, whatever you observe, everyone knows, oh, they're committed to the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. You don't even have to preach anything. Just with what you eat, already knows whom you serve. And the days of the week that you serve, that you keep holy, tells you to whom you serve. Make sense? It says, mention this. So it's here in Numbers 30, verse 2, if a man makes a vow to the Lord and swear with an oath, a binding pledge on himself. And Jacob said it. If you keep me on the way and I come back, I'll give you a tenth. Did you get that? It says, Numbers 30 verse 2 mentions not only an neder but also an oath, shvuah, and the obligation. It is therefore instructive when considering that these terms differ. The vow was vowed and sealed with an oath, a binding obligation. So now, remember, when Jacob decided that he wanted to make a vow, they would have understood at that time the significance of what they were doing. They would have known. Question. Did Jacob receive the blessing while he was away in the house of Laban for 20 years? Was he abused by Laban? But yet he still prospered, right? He only wanted one wife. He ended up with 4. Now we know why we can have more than one wife. It's chaotic. I mean, trying to deal with one. Come on, ladies. You know you don't come with instructions. It's not easy. No, we're easy. We're very predictable. Just give us a remote, feed us, and we're happy. It's not that difficult. You know? But you ladies are a piece of work. And you know it's true. Hey, honey, throw the trash out. Well, it's not time sensitive to us. Be definite. Hey, honey, can you please throw the trash out right now within the next 5 minutes? Because I need to do something. If you tell me throw the trash out, I think I could do it in an hour. It's not time sensitive. You didn't give me a time limit. And this is what, ladies, you want to really get on your husband's nerves, do it this way. Tell him to do something and you do it. Why would you ask us to do something if you're going to do it yourselves anyway? Don't do that to us. Instead, say, hey, honey, I need the trash out now because I need to do this. And we just do what we want, what you want. We want to make you happy. Because living with a mad woman is the worst thing in the world. It is heaven. You see, they're already laughing. You see, it is heaven. What is heaven? You know I'm playing around, but it's true. I mean, we have our things that drive you ladies crazy. That's what makes the relationship work. Because if we're the same, then it makes no sense. It's boring. You know? I just took you on a little commercial because I want to get into something more serious. So when we go now into chapter 32, I'm not going to really, 32, we start there. We're going to go to chapter 34. You know, he already promised. Actually, no, let's go to chapter 33. Let me see. Let me figure it out here. In chapter 32, verse 9. Watch this. Then Jacob said, O God of my father Abraham, God of my father Isaac, and O Lord, who said to me, return to your land and to your family, and I will deal with you, well with you. I'm not worthy of all the loyal love and all the faithfulness you have shown your servant. This is Jacob speaking about God. God told him, return to the land. He says, I'm not worthy of your loyal love. That's the key. Okay? When Laban deceived him, he still blessed him. When Laban stole from him, he still preserved him. Okay? I'm not worthy of all the loyal love and all faithfulness that you have shown to your servant. For with only my staff, and I have crossed this Jordan, and now have become 2 camps. Please, watch. Please rescue me from the hand of my brother, from the hand of Esau. For I fear him, lest he come and attack me, mother and children alike. And now you yourself said, I will surely deal well with you, and make your offspring as the sand of the sea that cannot be counted for abundance. So now he's recognizing 20 years have passed. He comes back because God told him to come back. If it wasn't for that, he would not have come back. He would have stayed in Laban's house. Okay? And now he's afraid of his brother because you see, he deceived his brother. Measure for measure, right? So now he doesn't want to come back, but God told him to. Says, okay, save me. You rescue me from what's going to happen. Now, watch. Then later on after that, then you have what is called the fight between the Malach. And I'm not going to get into this because I do not agree with Judaism's position that was the angel of whatever. And I don't know. I don't agree with that. Okay. So it's an opinion. So I'm going to bypass that. I want to get more into something more concrete. Is that okay? All right, when we get into opinions, everybody has one, and there's always a problem. Now, when Jacob wrestles with the angel, right? And then he wrestles, he's fighting for his life. But the key here is that he's afraid. He is afraid of Esau because at one point, 20 years earlier, he deceived him of the blessing. Because he wanted the blessing more than Esau. Esau could care less. Esau rather go hunt the stuff than care about the blessing. Jacob cared about the blessing. From the womb, they're fighting. From the womb, they're trying to usurp one another. The whole thing going on right now with the Palestinians, it doesn't surprise me. But you know who's the fault for all of that? Joshua. All the way to the time of Joshua. Because God specifically told them, do not make a covenant with any of them. There'll be a thorn on your side. And because we're trying to please and care about the world says, we are making agreements. By the way, you're never going to see covenant Muslims and Israel. The last covenant was between Begin, I think it was, and the king, the leader from Egypt, Sadat. And it cost both their lives. Because you're not supposed to come in covenant with the Jews according to the Muslims. They come into agreements. So pay attention to the language. It's always an agreement. When it's a covenant, you cannot attack them now. This is the reason why Egypt will continue to always be mediators, because although they don't like Israel, they cannot attack them. They came into a covenant. And by the way, they broke bread and they have salt covenant. That's the problem. When the both leaders, they got together and they broke bread. That's binding according to their culture. Very interesting. Did you know that? So an agreement. So here you have Israel coming back to the land in 1948, and they're trying to appease the Palestinians, who, by the way, they're Egyptians. They're not really Palestinians. You know, Arafat, not only was he gay, hope you know, okay? Oh, yeah, he was flaming gay. Big time. I talked to one guy who was part of the, what's his name, of the secrets, whatever, in Israel, and he told me they have videos of him in Romania. That's why his wife was in France. He was always over here in Bethlehem. There's so much to tell. He's not getting no 72 virgins when he's in heaven. If the Palestinians would have known that, that's the worst kept secret in the Middle East. So you see the whole immorality, the deviant within them. Okay, you're not supposed to make covenants with them. So what happens is, now Jacob, after fighting the angel, and after asking God to protect him, after 20 years of God protecting him in his own family's house, taking advantage of him, when he sees Jacob, he's afraid. Now look, chapter 33, verse 1 through verse 3, and we're going to get stuck in verse 3. And Jacob lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, Esau was coming, and 400 men were with him. And he divided the children among Leah and Rachel, and among the two of his female slaves. And he put the female slaves and the children first, then Leah, then for her children next, and then Rachel and Joseph last. Even in the way he set up the structures of the camp, he's showing the preference in whom he loved. The servants, they're okay. Leah, I don't like her that much anyway. I mean, remember, you got to connect the relationship they're having throughout the whole thing. I mean, Jacob didn't want Bilhah and Silpah. I mean, they created chaos for him. Reuben slept with one of his handmaids. You see what I'm saying? There's a dysfunctional family, just like we are a dysfunctional kingdom. The same thing. Okay? And you see the whole structure of the order, how he separated them. It's by importance, in my opinion. Now watch, verse 2. He put the children of the slaves and the children first, and Leah and her children next, then Rachel and Joseph last. Verse 3. He himself passed on before them and bowed down to the ground 7 times until he came to his brother. Verse 4. And Esau ran to meet him and embraced him and fell upon his neck and kissed him, and they wept. Now, when you go into the Torah scroll, if you have a Torah scroll, you look into the word kiss on that verse. And the scribes, they put above the Hebrew word kiss, they put 6 dots. One of the jots and tittles. You look it up in any Torah scroll. Google it. Look for the kiss of Esau in the Hebrew text. And you see above the word kiss in Hebrew, put 6 little dots. Because the writer of Torah, the scribes, is telling you that that's a fake kiss. That he just wanted to bite him. It's really what it is. It's not a real peace agreement here. Okay? But you notice that I'm telling you what happened. after they met, but what happened before he met. What did Jacob do when he was afraid of his brothers? He sent a tribute to Jacob, right? Let's go find that. It's actually in chapter 30, whatever I remember here. Give me a second. 32. And you're going to read verse 13 all the way down. And he lodged there that night, and he took from what he had with him a gift for Esau, his brother. What he had with him, a gift to Esau. You see, when you don't connect that to chapter 28 of the book of Genesis, then chapter 32 or 33, it's like, okay, he's going to give him a gift. No, you don't understand. Remember when God told him, when he made the vow, if you stay with me, whatever you provide for me there, I will give you a tenth. Because God is the master, right? What did he do with that tenth? He gave it to Esau. Watch. 200 female goats, 20 male goats, 200 ewes, 20 rams, 30 milk camels and their young, 40 cows, 10 bulls, 20 female donkeys, and 10 male donkeys. And he put them under the hand of the servants, herd by herd. And he said to his servant, cross on ahead before me and put on distance between herds. And he instructed the foremost, saying, when Esau my brother comes upon you and asks you, saying, whose are you and where are you going? To whom does these animals belong ahead of you? Then you must say to your servant, to Jacob, your servant. Wait a minute. Jacob is the servant of God, not the servant of Esau. You never caught on to that before? And it says, it is a gift sent to my Lord. Okay? To Esau. So there's a messenger bringing the animals, the tribute that was supposed to be given to God based on the vow that he took. Because of fear, he gives it to the enemy. We all do the same thing. Because of fear, we mix the holy and profane. Because of fear, we will not say a word when there's unrighteousness and oppression. Because of fear, we are afraid of saying something from the pulpit that might get people offended, and then people leave. We forget that we all made an oath and a vow to God. We have to appreciate those people that correct us. Clearly, the way you do it also has a lot to do with it. But for some reason, the kingdom likes mean leaders. Pay attention to them. Man, look at the mainstream Christian leaders. They abuse their flock. They take advantage of their flock. They live incredibly rich lives based on lies they give to their flocks. People like those. They like the entertainment. They like the flash. They like the bling bling, like they used to say. But then when you have leaders who teach righteousness and teach holiness, we don't want that because it requires a higher level of separation. Now you're going to be the odd person out. You don't want to be that. You want to be part of the group. It's called peer pressure. Right? And it's interesting, there are those people who do not succumb to peer pressure, the ones that really prosper. Because if you really go by the peer pressure, you'll never amount to anything. There's been a time in your life that you decided to do one thing in the way that you know is right, and then you lose friends, you lose relationships, you lose people that you thought were your friends, but then 20 years later, you've moved ahead in your life, and because they were afraid, their fear, they're trying to instill it in you, and by doing so, now you limit yourself because you're trying to, keep yourself from living your life because somebody else's fear. Parents, we do that all the time. We're so afraid of the kids making a mistake, sometimes we don't let them live their own lives. We instill fear in them. Oh, I want to have a kid, Mom. I don't know. Things are so difficult today. It's expensive. I don't know. It's just too much insecurity in the world right now. Because maybe they're not capable of standing up and have children themselves. They don't want the kids to have children or whatever. Fear. When we stand up for the things of God. You know when somebody prays because they're really praying fervently or because they're praying based on trying to impress people. You know by the way they start praying. Or you go somewhere and you have to make a decision for the righteousness of God, and you don't do it because you're afraid of what they're going to think of you. You want to try that for 2 minutes? Get in our ministry shoes. It's not easy getting up here because everyone assumes we have it all figured out. Nope. You know what keeps me humble? I go every week, 5 times a week, except for Friday night and Shabbat, obviously. And I get beat up by young kids on the mat. Been practicing jiu-jitsu 8 years now. Been doing martial arts 30. And I'm a master in 3 systems of martial arts. And I started from scratch with the double hip replacements. And you show up to class and you see some 21, 22, 25, 30-year-old. And they're stacked like this. And they're fast. And, you're trying to survive with these guys and you have to do a round in 6 minutes. And you're going like, why am I putting myself through this? Doubt, fear, anxiety, claustrophobia. Those are the things that I deal with every time I go to class. The fear of failure, the fear of not doing well, and I forget I'm 58. I think I'm 20 when I'm there. And then after the round, 6 minutes, I win some, I lose some. It's no longer about winning, it's about survival. I survived 6 minutes with a 22-year-old kid who's a wrestler. Now, am I better than him? No. To me, it was an exercise of how I conquer my fear today. You know that after you develop a relationship, hey, where are you from? Who are you? Wow, how old are you? 58. Really? And then all of a sudden they're blown away that you're willing to get on the mat at that age and survive for 6 minutes. And then I'm going like, what was I worried about? I mean, I'm hanging out with kids, enjoying myself, doing something that they do better than me. That's the fear. Accepting that somebody can be better than you. That's the fear. That's what I found about myself. My fear was that I'm not as good on this as I thought I was on something else. And I have to undress my ego, leave it out the door, and that's very difficult. Because if you give me a knife, he has no chance. No joke. If you give me a stick, he's done. That's what I've done for 30 some odd years. I do that well, but I don't know how to do this. In the biblical perspective, it's the same thing. We're always afraid to embrace something that we're not comfortable with. And we're always afraid of what someone is going to think about us because we want to stand for the righteousness of God. We want to walk according to the statutes of the commandments of the Lord. And we're saying, no. I know I don't do it perfectly right now, but you're walking in it every day. You're here. And every week you're learning something new. And then you got to go home and talk amongst each other and says, okay, how are we going to implement this? And the first week, let me tell you an example in my life. The first time I kept Shabbat. First time. Okay. I read about it. I was like dancing around it. And finally said, okay, we got to do this. So we bought the juice. We brought the bread. We got the food. We didn't know what to do. So we didn't know the prayers. We didn't know the order. So we just, thank you, Lord, for the wine or the juice. And thank you, Lord, for the bread. And then we ate. And listen, I prayed. I studied. And I celebrated Shabbat. And I still had 23 hours that I didn't know what to make myself of. It only lasted 1 hour. I didn't know what to do after that. Because it was so new to me. I didn't know what to do. I mean, I've never prayed that long. Study? Oh, my Lord. And after I'm done, I'm thinking, what am I going to do? I got 23 hours left. Now Shabbat is so short. You welcome Shabbat and you can't wait for Shabbat to show up. And then you turn on the lights, the candles, and then you do the blessing, you do the meal with the family, or you do a study, and then when the Shabbat goes out in the afternoon or Saturday afternoon, you're going like, I'm looking forward for next week. Because now I know what to do. I'm expecting something. The same thing happens in the martial arts world. The same thing happens in your job. I'm sure when you started your job, you didn't know what to do. You were afraid. You were scared until you learned how to do it. How much more learning how to serve God? Jacob knew what he was doing. Jacob, he lived the blessing of serving the God of Israel. Jacob literally saw that the vow he made and his loyalty in Laban's house was being blessed by the God who told him will protect him. 20 years, guys. of experience, of blessing, tribulations with Leah, tribulations with Laban. I got it. But he was blessed in the midst of the dispersion. He comes home because God called him home. And the moment he saw his brother, he got scared. To the point that the Lord sent an angel to fight with him. Not only did God speak to him, send the angel, and then he saw Esau, and he melted in fear, and he took all of that he promised God, a tenth, and he gave it to Esau. Treason. Now you gave the tribute to God to another king, and he bowed down 7 times. Are you with me? Verse 17, and he instructed the foremost, saying, when Esau my brother comes upon you and asks you, saying, whose are you? I already read that part. Let me go down now. Let me get into this. I want to get right into what I wanted to. Are you getting something out of this today? So let's look into what bowing and scrapping is in the ancient Near East. You can get this from an article that I read. It's interesting. I read a long time ago. Bowing and scrapping in the ancient Near East. This is actually a thing. And if you go to the Amarna letters, which is a corresponding letters between the Egyptian kings and their vassals. So you have a great king and their vassal kings. So then what happens is when you have a lower vassal serving the great king, when they were encountering, you're going to get a really good idea how this works when you see the movie by Tom Cruise, The Samurai. When he goes to Japan and he encounters the king, he cannot look up because they believe the king was divine. And then he is walking up in the court of the king, and he's bowing down, walking towards him, and when he leaves, he bows down too. It's called bowing and scrapping. This is very well known in the ancient world. That's why in the temple you will bow and you prostrate yourself because you bow to the great master. Doing it to David was a sign of respect because God put David in the position of authority. But you're not supposed to bow to anybody only but God. Because he is the master. Okay, so watch. Let me read to you about what this is. This is important, okay? And I wanted you to understand that when the Bible mentions something, like he's bowing down 7 times from afar, this was widely practiced, but I'm going to show you why. Let me read it here. The practice of bowing and scrapping various numbers of times, including a specific emphasis on actions performed 7 times. So 7 times is lining up in the Bible to the way it was accustomed in when you have political enemies or allies and you want to render complete submissiveness to that particular king or that particular leader. It was a sign of submissiveness to a master. That's why I'm telling you that he took the tribute. Although the Bible doesn't say that this was a tribute for Esau. But the fact that he took what he promised God and gave it to Esau out of fear and then calls him my master. And he says, you are my Lord. And I'm your servant. And then he bows down 7 times. You read the storyline, but let me ask you all a question. How many of you have read this and never understood why he bowed down 7 times? There's got to be a reason. I went back and looked it up. Okay? It says, the practice of bowing and scrapping various numbers of times, including a specific emphasis on actions performed 7 times, holds significant cultural and ritual meaning in the ancient Near East. The repetition of these gestures often reflect themes of completeness, divine favor, and deep reverence in religious and social contexts. What is the significance of 7? Okay, we already know the number 7 is prevailing throughout the ancient Near Eastern culture, often associated with completion, perfection, divine intervention. In many cultures, the number represents fullness, or seen in 7 days, a creation of biblical text, indicating sacred completion of a cycle. Like 7 days, dedication of the altar, 7 days, consecration of the priest, 7 days is prevailing in the Bible. Okay? But this got more significance. Ritual practices, performing physical acts like bowing and scrapping 7 times, signifies profound submission. That's what it represented to them. But wait a minute. Jacob already made a vow to God that he will serve him, not Esau. That's what fear leads you to do. Fear leads you to commit treason against the one who blessed you. That's why marriage, adultery, is such a big abomination in the Bible. Because imagine you have a wife who's been there with you when no one else has been with you. And then when everything's great, another woman comes in and you give everything that you've earned with the help of this woman here who took you with nothing, and you give it to someone else. What affront would that be to a woman who's been loyal, faithful, helpful? That would be complete treason. Yes? That's why the marriage between men and women is so connected with the metaphor of the marriage between God and Israel. Okay. It says, this multiple repetition can be observed in various ancient texts and practices that emphasize the importance of completing a sacred act with sincerity and devotion. Examples of bowing and scrapping 7 times in the ancient Near East. In the Hebrew Bible, particularly in the narratives of the Old Testament, significant moments of supplication or worship are often accompanied by acts of vowing. And we see that throughout Scripture. When Elisha and Naaman, the Aramean, was washed 7 times in the River Jordan, so on and so forth. There are examples. So what is the cultural practice in diplomacy? In diplomatic interactions, representatives will often bow multiple times as a sign of loyalty and deference. 7 bows in this context could symbolize the utmost respect and acknowledgement of the receiving authority's power. Ancient texts, particularly the Amarna letters, detail such interactions, suggesting the practice of vowing, often to signify complete submission to the ruling power, was common in diplomatic engagements. An emissary may perform 7 vows to express a strong desire for peace or favor. So you understand now that what happened with Jacob was, I'm submitting to you. Well, he already made a vow of submissiveness to God. Do you see how now it makes sense? I'm a firm believer that what happened to Israel, to Jacob, after these events, is as a result of him opening chaotic consequences to him breaking his oath and his vow. I really truly believe that. Because if he would have been loyal to the Lord, God always promises that he will keep you and he will protect you. Yes? Did he protect them in the house of Laban? Nothing happened to his children. He comes to the land where God told him to. God told him, go to the land. I will do this. I will do that. And what does he do? I'm scared. And he sends the angel. I'm still scared. Oops, here comes all the money I'm supposed to give to the Lord. Same thing in the Bible with tithing. It was a temple proper thing. It was the tribute. Why do you think that the beginning of the year for the Hebrews was exactly at the same time as the beginning of the year for the Canaanites? Nisan for Passover. It's nothing new. If you read in the book of, I forgot right now, I'm thinking the verse, in the story of Abraham and Sarah, when the angels told them that he will come next year to give Isaac, remember? If you go to that text, let's go there real quick. I want to show you something. Got about 20 minutes? Is that about right? Are you having a good time? I'm trying to follow my methodology. My methodology, I forgot to bring them up. It's a card that I follow methodology of study. So when I teach, I follow those highlights. Covenant, righteousness, and justice. It's a method of study that I use, and I'm using it a lot when I teach now to give you different types of facets of the storyline. I could give you a spiritual application. I've been doing this a long time. I could give you a spiritual application. But sometimes when we study the Torah, if I give you a contextual application, the spiritual will come by itself. But once you understand this context of bowing down, then you understand that to God it's never good when you give your best, you promise to the Lord, to someone else. You're showing submissiveness to somebody else instead of to the Lord. Okay? So when you go in where's the chapter he talks about? I think it's 18. Chapter 18. And I don't know if this translation has it, but it's when he's saying, help me out, okay, guys? When he talks about Sarah's faith is tested, when it talks about giving them, here we go. Watch this. It's verse 9 and 10. Chapter 18, verse 9 and 10. It says, then they said to him, where is Sarah, your wife? And he said, here in the tent. Verse 10. And he said, I will certainly return to you according to the time of life. What in the world does that mean? I mean, where's the time of life? He's telling, I'm coming to you in a particular time frame. The time of life. Does any other version that you have say something different? Anybody? This time next year. Oh, but once you understand the language and you know what it means, let me find it over here. Verse 18, verse 10, chapter 18, verse 10. It's fascinating. When I went back to the culture, that's really what I do in my studies. I go to cultural background stuff. Spend all my studies looking into the background. And it says, watch this. This version says, and he said, I will certainly return to you in the spring. Lexham Bible is a scholarly Bible. It's only using logos. But they all know that in the text, it says, literally at the time of life. But the expression of the time of life in the ancient Near East, in the time of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, in the Middle East, in Israel, it was the spring. Because you have winter, death. Spring, life. So the events in chapter 18, when the angel showed up to Abraham, the spring. Now we know why Yeshua resurrected in the spring, not in the winter. Because it went along with the theme of resurrection. Come on, not even an amen. What's wrong with you people today? I'm working hard, people. Come on. That's a very important clue right here. But you read the text, in the time of life, what in the world does that mean? But to the people there, they knew in the spring, resurrection. Now we know why Yeshua resurrected in the spring and not in the fall. It's directly connected. Now you know why the feast begin in the spring. From the winter, and then you go into the rains come, and then the fruit comes out. And what does God tell Israel? Now take your bikurim, your first fruits, and bring it to my temple. Don't bring it to the Canaanites. The same thing, right? Jacob makes a vow to give what God gives him to him. He gives it to Esau. It's the same as if you work on the fields in Israel, and then the spring comes around, and you set aside the grain and the 7 species of the land, and then you take the first fruits of the land, and instead of going to Jerusalem, you go to a pagan Canaanite temple and give the first fruit to Baal, another master, another husband. That's what the word Baal means. It's the same story. It's exactly the same story. Is this making sense? It's teaching us something. Never compromise the oath that you made. Never give your best that's supposed to be to God to anybody else, not even your own children. Not your family. They get seconds. Everything else comes to God first. That's why the children, we dedicate them to the Lord. That's why the fruits, we dedicate them to the Lord. That's why our jobs, we dedicate it to the Lord. We say that from here, but in our actions, we put our families, we put everything else above God. If we need to choose what God desires, we want to appease everyone else. Jacob did it. Israel did it. The prophets did it. Everyone did it. No wonder we're in chaos. We all do the same thing. And I myself included. Because of fear. We have to conquer the fear. So now all of a sudden, when you come back to the storyline, and you're reading what's going on here, he bows down 7 times. And then what does he do? Esau encounters him and gives him a hug. And the hug is not a real hug. Even the rabbis understood that Esau hated him. He took away something. He didn't take for what? He didn't want the gift of Jacob, by the way. Right? Well, the damage is done. Then when you go to the next verse, to the next chapter, it makes a pivot. He goes to Sukkot. He dwells there. He buys a piece of land in Shechem. And then his daughter decides to go wander by herself. Remember, Dinah means judgment. Dinah. The root word is like judge. Why does it have to mention that she went out on her own? The rabbis tell you in their midrash that Dinah was actually, she went to Egypt. The Bible never mentions her again. It doesn't mention her children. It doesn't mention anything. She was shamed because of what she did, right? The whole storyline now takes a different perspective. Because the moment she goes on her own, walking around yonder, that's not a very nice compliment thing. I mean, you're not supposed to do that. The Muslims are the only culture right now that you can learn this from. They go as far back as you can. They will not allow a young girl to walk around by themselves. Why is that? Because if she goes after whoring, on her own, and then she sleeps around with a guy who's not a Muslim, not only will that shame her, but shames her family and her dad. And thus you have what is called, what do you call it? They call it something. Honor killings. We don't understand that language. That's what Simeon and Levi did. Because, you see, Dinah was dedicated as the family of Jacob. Is Cherem, Cherem is for destruction or for service. The land has been dedicated to God. The priest to God. The Israel to God. That means that we're separated for worship to the Lord. If someone touches us, they are touching God's property. Then God is bound by his covenant to defend us. But if we go whoring after our own way, and we choose to be unfaithful to God, then we are defiling ourselves. And that's why the penalty in the Bible for adultery and idolatry is the same. It's the only ancient Near Eastern document in which adultery and idolatry has this, it's in the treaty format, and also the same penalty. Is this making sense to you? Let's go to Romans chapter 10. I want to remind you of our responsibility. And then I'm going to come back to Jacob and I'll be done with this. In Romans chapter 10, verse 9, it's a very important verse that sometimes we do not consider, and we should. We use it in, if you accept Jesus as your personal Savior, please stop using that language. That doesn't appear anywhere in the Bible. Salvation in this case is not personal. It's always collective. You are redeemed at the personal level, but then salvation will be to the whole kingdom. But when we use salvation as a personal Savior, that immediately starts putting a mindset in the people that this is an individual relationship, when in fact your behavior, my behavior affects all of us. It says collective honor, individual honor. Collective shame, individual shame. Dinah's behavior caused a collective shame to the whole family. Now, Jacob was being political. You can tell Jacob is trying to be appeasing. He didn't get upset because they raped his daughter. You notice that? He didn't get upset. He said, hey, let's have a deal. Because, you see, Jacob in a way was right. Think about it. Because if he gets upset, he doesn't give his daughter, then he has no dowry. See, in the ancient world, the father paid a dowry, and the husband-to-be paid a dowry. That's why the story of Rachel and Leah, that's why Rachel, she hid the gods under her, right? Family gods. You notice that? She sat on them. Why is that? Because the family gods was actually the evidence and the proof of the firstborn blessing. Let me repeat that again. When she sat on the gods of Laban, she took them with her. Because you see, Jacob was adopted by Laban. Then he was deceived by Laban. And then he had boys being born now. He had girls first. Then he had boys being born, but we got a problem. You gave the blessing to Jacob. What are you going to do now? So that if this is one of my family gods, you have family gods, national gods, and community gods in the ancient world. So the way they did it in the land of Mesopotamia, that if you are the firstborn of the family, the father will give you the family god. You're going to give me a good burial, And this is the proof that now you bear the responsibility and the firstborn blessing. Rachel understood this. So when she leaves the house of Laban, she's basically letting her father know, you deceived my husband. I'm taking now the proof that your kids can inherit anything you got. Oh, you didn't get it. Come on now. You see, so now she goes, she sits on it, she's on her menstrual cycle, so they're not going to ask her to get up. But you see, later on in the story, after Dinah gets raped, and the whole fight between the people of Shechem, what happened? What did Jacob tell the people? Now he goes to Bethel. After he broke the oath, he gave the tribute to Esau. After he went to Shechem, God didn't tell him to go to Shechem. He says, if you bring me back to this place, Bethel. He didn't go to Bethel. He stays someplace else. And then Dinah goes yonder on her own. She gets raped. He loses honor. Now he's trying to restore the honor. His kids mess it all up. Chaos! Because he broke the oath, a vow. He broke a vow. And then after, what is it? Read it in the story. Chapter 34 and 35. Then he says, now guys, put away your strange gods and let's go to Bethel. And they buried it in the tree of Mamre, right? So wait a minute, I don't understand. He brings a whole bunch of people with him from Laban's house, and then they brought their gods with them? Oh, that's idolatry. Well, to them it's not considered idolatry. To them it was a proof of their inheritance back where they came from. In other words, what Jacob is telling them is, okay guys, I think God made it clear that we need to stay here. Put away your gods. You're not going back. That's a proof of your inheritance over there. If you're really serious about this God, bury your inheritance, bury your past, leave your father's house. That's the language with Abraham. Leave your father's house and your inheritance. Are you with me? Is this making sense? Are you willing to leave your past behind to move forward in your commitment to God? That's the question. Let me remind you how serious this is. In Romans chapter 10, verse 9, it says that if you confess with your mouth that Yeshua is your Lord and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. And then if you keep reading verse 10 and 11, watch. For with the heart one believes, resulting in righteousness, but with the mouth confesses, resulting in salvation. Because of loyalty. It's a confession. It's an oath. The word confess, homologeo, means to affirm. It's like a covenantal language. So every single one of you have come into a covenantal language. When you accepted Yeshua, how many of you accepted Yeshua as your master? That's what the word Kyrios is. You believe he's the Son of God, right? You believe he died and resurrected, right? That the Father resurrected. You believe he's at the right hand of the Father, right? You believe he'll come back in the clouds of heaven, right? Then you cannot mix the holy and the profane. You made a vow. You now have an oath of loyalty. That's why the Great Tribulation is going to happen. I've always tried to figure it out. I'm doing a study in the book of Revelation, chapter by chapter. You see the way I taught you culture, history. See all the information I've given you? That's how I'm covering the book of Revelation. 3.5 hours in the first chapter of the book of Revelation. You know, because there's a lot to be told there. Okay? But in the book of Revelation it talks about, you know, the great Babylon. But I thought that John was talking about Rome. And that puzzled me for years. Until I found in the history that it was the Romans and it was actually the Babylonians who destroyed the temple. So the book of John is actually reflecting the authorities of two great powers who destroyed the house of God. And the reason is because of the immorality and the breaking of the oath of Israel when they rejected God and they worship other gods. It's exactly the story here. You see it throughout the wilderness. Same thing. Israel gets redeemed out of Egypt. They worship the golden calf. Israel goes into the promised land. They worship the Canaanite gods. Israel goes to Assyria. They worship their gods. Israel goes to Babylon. They worship their gods. Israel come back to the land and they worship the gods of the Greeks. They worship the gods of the Romans. They go into dispersion. They assimilate among the nations. But yet still, God always select people from among Israel to have greatest position of power in the governments so that when things go crazy, there's someone near the powers of authority to pave the way of salvation, except for death. Death is something that none of us can avoid. We try to delay it as much as we can. Right? But God has also selected someone to be in a position of authority to pave the way, to return to God's garden. And this time he selected Yeshua to be in the position of authority at the right hand of the Father, that he himself suffered death and resurrected so that you can get the benefit of resurrection because of an oath, because of a vow. And in turn, there's no reason why the pastors should have to entice you to give a donation to the congregation. Because our duty is to be grateful to God for everything you've given me. So I want to bring my tribute. So I want to give a free will donation. Say, Lord, I'm thankful. There's no temple, but I'm still thankful. I want to give my best to help the community grow. We're not making a difference right now. The Muslims, they have schools. They have people in high positions of office. They have butcher shops. They can get their meat. In the Messianic movement, where are the butcher shops? Where are kosher that you can buy stuff? Where are the universities that teach about the principles of Torah and Yeshua? We're not making a difference. How many people who believe in Yeshua are actually in positions of authority as a governor or a mayor or a councilman or a senator or whatever that we know of? Either they're Christians or they're Muslims or they're just atheists or communists. And then we sit here and we complain and we hope. I hope someone gets elected. Maybe things will get better. And yet we were chosen to be distinct and to be a blessing to all the nations of the earth. But we are so fearful what people will think. Because when Christmas comes around, or when something comes around that don't come with the values of the Torah, now we have to confront the audience and say, well, we don't do that. If you're politicians, all hell breaks loose because you have to appease everybody. No, this new president that we're going to have already proven, he tells you things, how things should be said. And in the beginning, they hate him. Now they can't wait for him to get back. I remember when he said the same things back in the 80s. And a lot of the young people could not stand him. Even the older people did not like it because he was saying stuff the way things should be said, right to the point. Oh, we don't want this guy. Right? Now they can't wait. Because they appease somebody who told you what you wanted to hear, who was a scoundrel and a deceitful, who can't even control his own family, but you pretend he can control the nation. We missed it because we don't follow the same principles here. If Jacob could not fulfill the vow that he made to God and be loyal to God, how can his children be loyal to him? You understand the chaos now? The one at fault was Jacob. He deceived his brother because he wanted something so desperately. He was willing to deceive them. Fine. He went away. He was blessed. He made a vow. Now he changed his life, but he still compromised on his vow. The children see everything you do. And then all of a sudden now the children see him come. Why is he bowing down to Esau? Isn't he supposed to be loyal to God? How much chaos did Jacob's house have after these events? Let's go through them. First, 20 years in Laban's house. He went through hell over there in Laban's house. Why? Because he did something wrong to his brother. I mean, again, it was prophesied that would happen. I got it. But the way he went about it, I don't think it was right. Anyway, that's besides the point. He got the blessing. Good for you. Now deal with the consequences for doing things out of turn. Okay, fine. Then he comes back to the land. He gives the tribute he promised God to somebody else. His daughter gets raped. The two children, Levi and Simeon, they're hotheads, man. And they want to just slash everybody. I like those. Anyway, so all of a sudden now, they get into chaos. They go into a war. And now they have to start from scratch. Then what happens? Tell me what happens. Then Rachel dies. The one that he loved. Remember, he's not treating Leah very well. Then the one he loves dies. Now he's stuck with two boys. And he likes Joseph more than he likes all the other children. Then he lets her known, and then everyone hates Joseph. And you notice in chapter 38 of the book of Genesis, it's all about the garment. The whole story is about the garment. It's chapter 37, I think it is. Okay? It's all about the garment. So what's the deal with the garment? It was the proof of the firstborn blessing. Okay? And then after that, Reuben sleeps with his handmaid. Judah goes out and marries a Canaanite woman. And then you have, he doesn't fulfill the oath he made to Tamar. Remember? Do you see the whole chain link events happening after one who's supposed to be loyal doesn't direct the proper way? If the leaders give up and they don't follow through on their promises and their vows to God, then the kingdom is not going to do it. As for me and my house, we will follow the Lord. And my responsibility is no longer to you, it's my family. You are the extension of my family. I have a granddaughter now. And my biggest issue is I want to make sure my son understands that whatever you do now brings consequences in later generations. It will do it. You can make mistakes. We're entitled if you pick yourself back up and do things the right way. But how many mistakes can you make? And it's interesting, we saw the mistakes of Jacob by honoring anyone other than God. And then you have a chain link effect all the way throughout. And by the way, Israel did the same thing, continues to do the same thing, and if we don't change, we will do the same thing. Amen? Hopefully you learned something new today. May the Lord bless you and keep you. So my final words for today is that be loyal to God above anything else. No matter what the world says, no matter what anybody tells you, my king deserves loyalty, faithfulness. He deserves your reverence. He deserves everything you can offer him. Don't let the world entice you to think that you have a better life away from him. I tried it. I made those mistakes. And for crazy reason, when I came back to him with nothing to offer, I was just in Florida the other day, and I took my wife. We were going for a ride, and I pulled in somewhere, and I parked. She goes, "What are you doing? Why are you parking here?" And I said, "This is the place where I was when I decided to return back to the Lord. I was parked right here. It was a rainy day, around 3 o'clock in the afternoon. My life changed. 1997, late 97, 98, early 98. When I came here and I repented and went back to God. And I wanted you to know where I was when that happened. Because what she sees now is nothing what I was then. So I have a lot to be grateful for. And I bow to the world. And I bow to baseball. And I bow to other things. And I bowed to fame. And I bow to pursuing my own things. Nothing to show but chaos. Now I have two sons, 27 and 33. And they are better men at their age than I was at their age. And I'm grateful that they're not alcoholics, they're not drug addicts, that they're serving the Lord. It's above and beyond what I deserve. I made a vow and I made an oath that if he will bless me, I will be loyal to him. Is it easy? No. Sometimes the world paints a picture that you will gravitate. It's like the pictures and the cartoons. They're made different now than they were when we were kids. They make you addicting. It's addicting, right? Sometimes, Pastor, you want to go the way of the nations. Easier. If I want to be famous, there are times I went to a football and I finished with this. Got 1 minute. I'm going to squeeze the whole time. Thank you for the time. I went to a football game. I haven't been to a football game since 1996. They took me. It was a gift. Somebody, it was beautiful. Indianapolis Colts against the Buffaloes. And I didn't want to go. I haven't really been involved in sports in so long. I don't even know what's going on in sports anymore. And I used to be an avid sports fan. Huge. Especially baseball. And I didn't want to go because it's not of interest anymore. My wife says, no. You do too much of ministry, you got to go. Enjoy yourself. Okay, man, whatever you say. When I show up, it was like, wow, this is football today? I was in awe. I was like, this is amazing. Wow, 60,000 people. It was full, beautiful stadium. There was not 1 minute that was boring. When it was to watch the Rams and stuff and the Raiders. You don't want to go to those things. You're going to fight or something. I didn't want to go to those. You're going to get beer poured out on you. They're going to cuss you out. Somebody's going to fight you if you don't wear the right jersey and the right color. What do you do? Blue, red, black? What do I wear? Hell no. And I show up, had an amazing time. And then all of a sudden, it dawned on me. 60,000 people raising their hands, their voices. They have the camera going around and people acting like fools because they want to be in camera. And I made a quick prayer and I realized, if only this many people will come to worship you. And I asked them, if you give me the opportunity, you enlarge my territory, allow me to go to a broader audience. I don't know if I ever will speak to an audience of 60,000 people. The message that I teach, I don't think is conducive for that many people. But I could tell you, I could switch it today. I could make some adjustments. And it would appeal to many people. At what cost? Breaking my vow? Breaking the oath of loyalty? For fame? So people will know me? Or focus on the remnant, which is huge? Because maybe I'll be the teacher of the one who can go to billions. That's the hard part of the leader. How do I deal with keeping my loyalty to God, not compromise of the principles, and allow Him to bless me the way He wants to bless me, and don't seek out after the blessing of the world, or the safety of the world, or the acceptance of the world. Be loyal to God. Be faithful to Him. Keep your oath. Keep your vow. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise, because you never want to betray the trust and the love that God has given you. To honor Him, to praise Him, to uplift Him. Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, guys. Thank you so much.